So for me, the most wild thing is the retatrutide, the Monjaros, all this type of stuff in terms of the difference that can make from a weight loss perspective. Even like for myself, I'm taking it now. It's just like just suppressing your appetite and just making it easier to not eat things you shouldn't be eating. Where compared to like 5 years ago is insane. So I think the compound effect of that in 10 years time in terms of obesity, I think it could be incredible.
Yeah. But when I see overweight people now, I think there's no need. We know there's something for you, right? So, and most people do work well. You just need to find that. It's finding the sweet spot. I never use the word suppress. I always use the word regulate. So appetite regulation rather than suppression, because people think differently. Because I want people to be hungry. I want them to wake up hungry. I need to know that their cortisol's working and their metabolism's working. And if they say, I just don't feel hungry, for me, that's an overdose. So we just need to tail it back a little bit just so that they've got enough. The big thing now is what I see, especially at my age, but when I'm speaking to people, it keeps saying they've got no energy. It's because they're in a calorie deficit. So eat more. I say, I feel better now, so I increase my calories. It's so simple. But of course, if you're taking too much of a GLP, you're not getting enough calories, then you've got no energy to train. You're working out, your oxidative stress levels are high, and suddenly they've got no motivation because they're not calorie efficient.
Is there any other peptides people can kind of be taking to increase kind of energy and like efficiency throughout the day?
Generally, when I'm speaking about energy, so we've got a non-peptide compound, Sloop, SLUP332. That's very similar.
It's good for fat loss as well,
Good for fat loss. Very similar to MOTC, actually. It's targeting the mitochondria. It's just not. It's going straight to the mitochondria rather than the receptor protein.
Would you recommend taking that with BAM as another?
So BAM-15 seems to work very well with Sloop. But what I saw, we had a compound where they were taken together, and we saw quite a lot of side effects from that. I pulled that very quickly, that product actually, and people were just feeling, it's hard to explain, it's almost like feeling dirty. I feel like I need to have a shower. It's quite a weird response. So some people do set it as a compound. From feedback, I pulled it quite early on, but that does work well. SS31 before MOTC works well. So that's targeting the cardiolipin. That's been approved by the FDA recently. So that targets the cardiolipin of the intracell of the mitochondria, the membrane, and that helps build, it's almost like scaffolding for your mitochondria. So if you do that for 2 to 4 weeks first, and then add the MOTC, that's when everyone seems to respond much better to MOTC.
So there's almost kind of like layers you can kind of move up in terms of like base level of peptides, there may be more advanced ones.
Yeah, foundation and then build on the foundation,
And then one of the things that people might be concerned about this is maybe like an addictive side, and particularly maybe for like the weight loss side of, say things like retatrutide. What do you think is the lifespan that people should be kind of taking these things for?
Yeah. One of the first things I say to people now when it comes to weight loss, and this is, I'm not a PT, but I'm sure a lot of PTs say this, is that it's consistency and motivation and willpower. If you don't have that, it's going to be very hard to lose weight. So when I speak to people on GLPs, I say, can we agree that first? And I say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do everything I need to do, try and hold my muscle mass, etc. Okay, so when we get to the end of your first 6 week cycle, sometimes you might extend it to 12 weeks, but normally 6 weeks, this next 6 weeks is when you really need that willpower. Because there is a chance that, I don't like the word rebound, but there's a chance that you might start to feel more hungry. And this is when you need to be really strict, and then go back again 6 weeks later. If you're really struggling, I sometimes reduce it to 4 weeks, and then just go back again until you get till you reach your objective, and then stay off it until you feel you need to go on it again. Because the idea is that we don't stay on peptides forever, or not the same peptides forever, particularly GLPs, which again I frame as peptide drugs. So it's just cycling them. There's other cycles where I know one guy that does a 14-week protocol when he runs, I think 4 weeks at 3 shots per week. Then the next phase is 2 shots, and the final phase is 1 shot, and then take a 3-month break.
So it kind of tapers down.
Yeah.
Do you think, so like one of the things that, in my opinion, is kind of like a bit of an old wives' tale, is that like as soon as you start taking these, you lose all your muscle mass. What's your take on that?
I'd say losing muscle mass is a side effect, so we need to get to a sweet spot where you're not losing muscle mass. It's very difficult, as you know, physiologically, it's very difficult to lose weight and not lose muscle if you're losing weight. And then it's just all the basics, making sure, again, I come to the agreement with the client, get their body weight, make sure they're taking the right amount of protein. You need to consume this amount of protein. If that GLP is stopping you from doing that, then you were going to find a negative effect. And of course, resistance training. So as long as we can agree to those two things, and we keep the dose correct, not too much, then that's generally okay. Also, sometimes we run growth hormone secretagogues along the side it to help build muscle, hold muscle. Sometimes, depending on the person, I'll introduce it a little bit later, because sometimes ipamorelin is very mild. It's not like a GHRP6, but it does go through the ghrelin hormone, so that can stimulate hunger mildly. So if they're already struggling with hunger, then we don't start with an ipamorelin. We say, okay, let's get the retatrutide working first, and then we'll include the ipamorelin.
Is there any benefit to someone using something like ipamorelin if they're already using things like growth hormone?
So there's an interesting protocol. So as we know, growth hormone overrides your biology. So there's many people take it in different times of the day, some twice a day, some in the morning, some at night. I think morning sort of makes more sense because obviously you've got your natural growth hormone pulse when you go to bed. So one protocol that I like to see is if people are taking the growth hormone in the morning, is to take a growth hormone secretagogue in the evening, because it's stimulating the pituitary gland to pulse more of your natural growth hormone. So if you're doing that at night and taking that in the morning, then you're doing your best to not override your biology.
That logically makes sense.
Now, if you enjoyed this clip and you're a coach, creator, or a business owner and you want help in terms of how to scale your business using ads, AI, content, marketing, a lot of things we talk about on the show, then hit the link at the top line of our description in the YouTube video. You can book on a call with us and we'll walk through the whole process, audit your business, and show you where there's huge opportunities for you to scale.